Hello, beautiful people. I'm Natalie Kent, and here with me today is Tomar Levine, and we are going to have a very interesting chat about a topic which you may or may not have heard this term before, unity gender. So this is going into the realm of fifth dimensional living, unity consciousness, sexuality, gender, non-binary gender, all these topics that are starting to emerge now in our world as we move towards the age of Aquarius. And Tomar is going to ask me some Tomar-ish questions, which is her specialty, getting to the bottom of some things, what I really have come to understand about the unity gender in myself, and sharing this information with you out there to see if it resonates for you. So,
wonderful.
And now we mount our magic carpet.
So, Natalie, I'm really honored that you've asked me to play this role, because this is such a special and really sacred revelation that is part of your particular wiring, the kinds of things that you have been receiving and downloading, many of which are quite extraordinary. And I just wanted to add one thing when you said that it's about 5D living reality, like some potential future that we may be heading towards. And it's also a potential past, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say parallel reality. So my sense of what you've been perceiving is that it's very much in the realm of parallel realities, which is so much being talked about these days. We can hold it that way,
Yes,
which kind of leaves everything very open.
Yep. And if you're watching this, I invite you to just sit with your body, in your body, feel the truth of what emerges for you around any of this information, because this information has come mostly from my body and in a variety of ways. So it's actually what I refer to as sacred knowledge or ancient knowledge that is embedded in my tissue and my bones, and kind of has just naturally started to come out now. I'm sure that's no coincidence at the time we're at in humanity. So yes, thank you for that reframe, Tomar.
And bouncing off of what you just said, Natalie, I want to also just reflect and really honor about you that you have a particular access to your body, to bodies in general, to the earth, to the material existence of spirit in flesh, that you have a particular insight and a particular avenue and ways of both understanding and receiving information that is very different from most people, I think, who are high-level intuitives, clairvoyants, and have faculties beyond the normal. So you have a particular way of accessing, and it is very important, I agree, that people take this opportunity to connect with your own body, because one of the reasons why we are wanting to have this conversation and bring this information out is that there may be some people out there who will resonate. And you'll just know. It could be in your body, or it could be some other way. So, and if you don't, you don't. So it's either way, we're just sort of expanding the frame of reference of all the different potentials and possibilities as humanity expands, as we move into the higher dimensions, into our 5D future and higher levels of existence.
That's a great disclaimer for all of our videos that we do, Tomar.
Yeah, I'm going to try to remember that.
Parallel reality.
Parallel, just call it parallel.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. So, unity gender is a term that I guess I hadn't heard. It just came to me. And it's something that made complete sense based on how I've lived my life from very young and how I've interpreted this world. And one of the key things I remember when I was growing up, because I completely felt like an alien here and regularly thought, can you come and get me? Like, what am I doing here? This is the wrong destination. You made a mistake. And so I used to stare at the moon and cry to the stars and go, are you coming? So two things that really felt so foreign about this world. Number one is how people treat the earth, pollution, and I just couldn't wrap my head around that as a child, and I didn't know how to I didn't know how to find peace with how people treated the planet, just from simple things like driving a car that pollutes the air, or putting rubbish in the bin like that doesn't break down. It just did not make sense to me. It still doesn't, but I've learned to adjust and get on with it, get on with my mission here, so to speak. And the other thing was around people. I just didn't categorize people, particularly around gender, race, or what people looked like, age, I had no discrimination around that. And so I used to just see people as energy and frequency. And therefore I actually felt very distressed from a young age about having to choose a gender as my object of affection. Why do I have to choose to be with a man or a woman or a boy or a girl? It still creates this kind of grind or friction in my body when I even have to think about choosing. And so I felt that from very young, and of course had no idea how to deal with that either. And so a lot of this stuff got suppressed in me, and I just tried to get on with life as normal here on earth, and I was mostly successful. But
you passed, right? You decided you passed.
But really underneath I was a complete just felt like a walk-in. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a frame of reference for this conversation today.
Yes, and what you just said about it's so hard to put other people in a box, well, it must have been even harder to put yourself in a box.
Yeah.
You were being asked to define yourself and to land and declare, this is what I am, I'm not this, I'm only that, as though because you also were expected to partake of categories.
Absolutely. And I just didn't see, I didn't reject being female. I just rejected being called anything around that. And so even into my 30s, when I was at one point studying the sacred feminine and doing a lot of that kind of work, I still would say I still feel genderless. I don't feel like gender fits for me. And, I'd get all these blank looks in the class, like, what's wrong with you? Like, we're here and doing sacred feminine work. So, it's been quite a journey to get to this point of being able to put a name to what I feel that I am, and having shared that with select people who feel similar, may not have had the same kind of journey with this as me, but something in them deeply resonates with the term or the concept of unity gender. And so the way I define unity gender is basically, everyone and everything is energy. So everything is unified. There are no categories, there's no binary. And there's also no need to modify what you are because you're not categorizing yourself. Full stop. So I think this is a bit of a spin on what is emerging today with so many children coming through and wanting to change their genders. Whereas this is actually coming to peace with what you are, because you don't have to label what you are. You don't have to fit man or woman. And that is very freeing, I must say, to come to that realization of that sense of peace in yourself, that nothing needs to change. It's actually you're embracing everything without a label.
So as you're speaking, I don't know if you define it this way or resonate with it in this way, but what you were saying to me was very strongly evocative of how I've always felt, from different spiritual traditions, you could describe it either as what a human being is pure consciousness,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or pure spirit,
Yeah.
or pure energy, or pure being, or pure essence.
Mm-hmm.
But where we are at the next level up, before we go into the dimension of form, before we enter form,
Mm.
supposedly we've had many lives where we've switched back and forth. We've been every variation of humanity. And the one who decides to have this journey and that journey and this experience and that experience isn't male or female, is just some kind of conscious energy or conscious aliveness. And all of those things have always felt more real to me. This sort of aliveness, consciousness, awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I noticed when I was a young woman was that because so much, let's say, so many novels have been written by men, so many accounts of life as it's lived through the lens of a certain consciousness have been written by men.
Mm.
And the predominant cultural, artifacts have been created on this planet, or put into the mainstream anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that have been male originated. Therefore, for a woman reading them, it feels extremely normal to shift into a male identity and to recognize that there's no difference.
Mm.
Whereas for men, where there are fewer cultural artifacts to slip into and see through the eyes of a woman, it may be harder to just automatically have that recognition, that realization that there's no difference. It's a mind, it's a feeling, it's a consciousness, it's a being, it's an awareness.
Yeah. Mm.
So, that's one of the places where I intersect with this, where I've always felt that there is no, that gender was not what defined me at all, or what I identified with. Also, because I personally didn't choose the typical female path of getting married and having children. In fact, I just knew I didn't want that.
Mm. So you broke the mold. You broke the stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one in my age category either, but still, it was like it had no attraction for me.
Mm.
When I was a little girl, it was very common for little girls to play with dolls, which means playing at being a mommy.
Mm-hmm.
But my toys were always animals.
Oh, that's cool.
Always animals or objects or
Yeah.
something else that I would project and
Yeah.
personify. But I had no interest in dolls ever.
Wow.
So anyway, just saying that because it's a different approach,
Mm-hmm.
but yet there is something, in me that definitely resonates to, well, of course, we're spirit. I mean, doesn't everyone know that?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
consciousness. Doesn't everyone know that?
Yeah.
But many people are more identified, for instance, with our human story, with our human personal history,
Mm.
with our, and of course, you could say that's the purpose of a human life, is to be completely immersed in this particular experience of life, relationships, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't what attracts me about
Mm.
life, particularly.
I think, well, what you're touching on is actually a big part of this is um, those programs, those social programs that we all have, or cultural programs that we all have to some degree. One of the signs I've noticed with unity gendered people, whether they realize they're unity gendered or not, and this is through my perspective on who these people are, is that they've often broken those social norms. they've often broken the molds, not married, not had children, not been gay or straight or had any classification, or just basically pushed against the culture of how they've grown up. And so that's also a sign and something to inquire deeper if that's you. What is it in you that has pushed back at some of those things? Like if you go deeper into that, and this is where I've come to understand, like I've actually gone on my own exploration of the unity gender and where it originated. And what has come to me from my body is I guess a memory of being unity gendered, living in a unity body on this planet in ancient times, like way before any of our documented ancient history. So before Atlantis even, or Lemurian times, before we were split into man and woman. And this is part of my memory, is that we were actually split, energetically split, and then we became a binary consciousness, or we were infiltrated with that consciousness. And so the reason this is important is for so many reasons, but one of them is that a lot of people contain or hold a lot of distress in their bodies about having to be man or woman. And often it's not even, there's no consciousness of it at all, but that tension, that strain is actually held deep in the bones, or in the membrane surrounding the bone structure. And so it contains who they really are, and they become like a distorted version of who they are at their core. And this causes me great sadness when I see this kind of suppression in certain people, because I've been one of those people, you know, to some degree. Even though I've been aware of this since I was young, I was still stifled by that same energy. And it's a control energy. And so it really does impact on a person's ability to be free in who they are. And this goes beyond LGBT, whatever classification you are by sexuality or sexual preference. This is actually, what's the nature of your body? What feels true in your body without any label, and to be completely free in that, to not have any definition or any label. So yeah, that's just something I've observed anyway.
So I've just got 3 different thought streams that comes out of that.
Yeah.
Great. So first of all, you know, you just reminded me that there are these really ancient myths about the time before males and females were divided, when there was a oneness. And the idea is that the whole dynamic of sexuality is this seeking of your other half, because there's this feeling of that you're not complete, and that what we're really seeking is to find that original completeness that was our true state of oneness.
Yeah.
So that's something that might be interesting to track down. Another thought was, you know, just the way we are culturally and socially conditioned to assume identity according to our family and our culture. And we're given, like you were saying, these boxes we have to fit inside of. And, you know, some of the biggest, most externalized ones might have to do with pursuing how you earn a living, pursuing, you know, your life according to what you're taught is required of you, and breaking free, you know, having the freedom to break free of those conditions just creates this huge freedom, this expansiveness, this opportunity to choose and to not be, you know, confined and oppressed. And so that happens on so many levels. And most of us are more familiar with it in terms of, you know, I was told I had two choices, be a doctor or a lawyer, you know, something like that.
Mm.
And or no one told me that it was okay to be an artist or whatever. You know, we have those are very common.
Yep.
But what you're pointing to is something so wildly fundamental. So, like,
Mm.
no one thinks of questioning, like, do I have to be in a gender identified body? Well, I shouldn't say no one does, because nowadays there is this gender fluidity where people are actually challenging that assumption.
Mm.
So that energy is here, that energy of freedom and choice, and who is going to tell me who I am and how I must experience myself or express myself.
Mhm.
But you're even going like, again, just to bring back my initial association with, well, the non-physical, like, why do I have to be in a body anyway? I would so much rather just be able to access my spirit body whenever I choose, or my energy body whenever I choose. And of course there are people who can do that.
Mm.
I don't have to happen to be one of those. But that whole defiance of, why am I locked into this cage, this prison
Yeah.
of physical form
Mhm.
altogether?
Mm.
So, you know, and your experience of it is, these categories make no sense. They were imposed on us. They feel imposed on you, you know, personally. But then what your intuition is guiding you to is, could it be that as a species, it was imposed on us? That it wasn't actually our original expression?
Mm.
And
Mm.
maybe there are other places, other realities where this is not, you know, where it is not a binary world, where it
Mm.
is not a polarized physical world,
Mm.
and parallel realities, or simply all other concurrent realities in other, you know, places in the cosmos, in the universe. It's a lot of places, a lot of lives in different forms. So
Mm.
who are we to say that ours is the right or only way?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, well, it's certainly something that I think is relevant to a lot of children coming through who have, some of them are connected to their starseed origin race, like if they've come through as Arcturian or Pleiadian or Syrian, whatever starseed they resonate with or have some memory of. You know, I've spoken to parents who have children who remember living on another planet. And so like that in itself to me is like, well, a lot of these races are genderless, so it makes sense that the children coming through are not ascribing to male or
Yeah.
female.
Or we
And
can assume that some of them are. Yeah.
yeah, and so this is a trend, I believe, is a trend and only going to increase.
Mm-hmm.
um, and ultimately I believe we will physically evolve back to being unity gendered in our bodies, but that is going to that requires a quantum shift in consciousness as well, because we have to shift into unity consciousness, and that's a huge leap right now, given that we are actually in duality bodies, one or the other. There isn't just one body, or one gender. And so it's actually a fundamental shift in our consciousness. When people talking about unity consciousness and moving to the fifth dimension and ascension and all this stuff, but fundamentally in the physical, what are the changes that are going to or need to happen in reflection of that? Well, you can't live in unity consciousness and have a duality body. It's not going to work. So
Maybe, you know, I can imagine a world where there are choices, where there are some, where you can choose or even flow from one to the other. We
well,
don't,
maybe,
you know, we
maybe.
can't even limit in our imagination what's ultimately possible.
Yeah, I think, well, I know that certainly with a lot of what I've read about Arcturian bodies and what I've seen of Arcturian bodies, there's huge diversity. So, but there is still no gender.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's not gender in the way we see gender. We see gender, the way we define gender is you must have this and this to make a third entity. So that's very limiting, and that's a limiting thing about man and woman, not the actual anatomy of man and woman. It's the thinking around black and white. This makes that. Yeah, I mean, we won't even get into the concept of self-conceiving children in unity bodies, or we can, but you know, like, as if you have a unity body, then you don't need another being or person to in order to procreate. You can do that.
And as I mentioned to you the other day, there are species on Earth that are already like that. You know, there are species on Earth that don't require two sexes to create a new life form. That, you know, I think of Earth as being the ultimate laboratory of creation. You know, and not to say that there aren't still way more forms, but there is almost an infinity of forms of life on this planet. And everything has been, so much anyway, has been experimented with. Let's try it this way. What about this? Maybe this would work. Why don't we tinker over here and see how that is? Would that be interesting? Would that be, you know, and really that's, you know, it's kind of how I see it. Like it's a project, like it's a, you know, science experiment for somebody.
Yeah.
And
I think Age of Aquarius is marked by like the ultimate self-expression. Whatever you feel in yourself, or who you are in this moment, you express that, and you're free to express that. I think we're moving in that direction now. And yeah, whether we all move back to having a single gendered body or not, who knows? But I definitely think everything is being loosened up around this, and the labels also for a lot of people need to go, because certainly, you know, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't, I had no preference around gender. So people would say, oh, are you gay or are you straight? And I'd say, I'm nothing. I don't have any preference at all around who my partner, what they look like or what they are, anything. And so, you know, I used to get some very strange looks when I explain it that way, because to me, jumping into another box, like breaking the heterosexual mold and then jumping into a homosexual mold, was just like, what? It's still a mold.
Or a bisexual mold.
Or a bisexual mold. It's not that. So this is different again. And when I speak about the unity gender, I'm speaking to people who feel like they have some genetic or physical difference that does not ascribe to the options you see out there.
And it must be an inner, I don't know, like a prompting or urge or memory, like you would say, or a funny feeling or a vision or a intuition or a wish or a, you know, like something that doesn't fit, that can't be articulated. And we do have on the table currently in our society a lot more choices, but you're actually opening yet another choice for a way to think about it that creates even greater freedom, even greater distance that one could potentially imagine traveling. Just, it's like, really, it's you know, it's a contemplation or imagination option. Like, imagine it. Can you imagine it? What happens when you imagine it? What comes to mind? What do you feel? And does it bring you joy? And so there are two other things that I've been thinking about. One is there's so much talk these days about DNA, about changes in our DNA, activation of our DNA, and latent, dormant DNA that has like a lot of different potentials. And this could be part of that. This could be one of those potentials. And the other thing, which I think is incredibly important, is the new children who are being born, who are remembering, who are more awake, who are bringing with them a lot of knowledge and a lot of connection, conscious connection. As you said, people who can remember not just past lives, but past lives on other planets and other families and other bodies. What happens with it? And I don't know if those memories retain. Often those children lose those memories after they get to be a certain age. But clearly there is and will continue to be a revving up of the awakeness and awareness and the range of what is possible for humans on this planet to access in their conscious awareness and their conscious memory, in their deep inner knowing. That's going to change the world immensely. And what you're talking about could well be part of it. If it's true that there are many planets that are not, strictly speaking, gendered, and children are coming from those places and thinking, what am I doing with this body? I like that other body better. I don't like the way people do it here. I liked it better there. That is that's part of what we're moving into also.
Yeah. And imagine if we could say to these kids who are like, no, I'm a man, no, I'm a woman, you know, like from so young and wanting to change their bodies and getting very distressed in most cases about the body that they're in. What if you could say to them, well, that's okay, maybe you're just unity gender. You know, maybe there's a third option, which is not a label at all. It's just you can go between man and woman in your consciousness. You don't necessarily have to change your physicality. You may choose to, but you don't have to, because it's not just two choices here. You can be whatever you want. So yeah, that's what I would love. I would have loved that for me as a child, so that I could have just dropped the distress around the choice. And I wonder how that might have shaped me differently, but there was certainly no talk of that when I was growing up. But nowadays it's a topic. So yeah.
Of course, it wouldn't be an option to change your physical body to a unity gendered body, considering whatever that would imply. And I know you have some memories and intuitions about what that might have been like, might be like, you know, so it would be more on a energetic level or an identity level. I think the issue of identity is what's really critical here. Having to lock one's identity into a constricting box.
Yeah.
So even if your body is still physically female or physically male, you can know that your identity is something totally free and totally not limited.
Yep. Yeah. Well, in terms of my sense of where this is going for people who are of the unity species, and in my experience so far, there are certain people who just are, and other people are not, and that's cool. And the people who are, it's like they have an ancient body, so to speak, trapped inside their current 3D version. And I think this is important to talk about, because this is part of what causes a lot of tension and distress and suppression in these people, is that they're actually holding down a whole other identity. And physically, the unity gendered body is far superior to our man-woman version. Superior because we can create our own children, we can, you know, we're more robust physically. And I might as well go into what I've seen around what a unity gendered body looks like or feels like, to give people a sense of this. But for a start, you know, our bodies are duality based. You know, we have 2 lungs, 2 breasts, 2 eyes, 2 everything.
Right.
2 ventricles in the heart. So what I've seen is there was no wall in between the 2 ventricles. There was only 1 chamber in the heart. There was no rib cage, because the rib cage is only in place as protection. And we didn't need to protect our hearts when we're in unity. There was no need for that. There's no flesh and bone, because that's again duality. Bone is masculine, flesh is feminine. We had a single tissue which was very strong, kind of like, reminds me of Barbie dolls. Now they don't have bones, and they're not soft either. They're kind of they're strong but supple. So our limbs and our torso was like that. And also I've actually seen we didn't have two ovaries. We had a single egg-shaped organ. That was our sexual organ. And so we didn't have teeth either because we didn't eat. So there's all these things.
A lot of changes.
There's a lot of changes. And so, I don't know if other people out there have any memories or sense of living this way. Like from a young age, I remember saying to my dentist when I was a young adult, I don't want to get any more fillings. Like, can you just pull all my teeth out and put implants in? Like, why would I want to pull my teeth out? And even now I go, do I really want teeth? Do I need teeth? Like, do I need to eat? Do I need to, do I need a man to have a baby? Does that feel true? Does that, what are you rejecting in your physicality? There's certain people who are rejecting parts of their physical bodies for a reason. There's some memory or something contained in them that is going, hang on, this isn't my body. This isn't right. I don't remember it like this. So that's going down another rabbit hole, but I think it's really important for the people who are in this category because it can be very distressing and not just emotionally, but it can cause physical ailments too. And perhaps making physical changes as well that they don't even know why they want to make. So yeah, there's that whole thing of how our bodies are different, and is there an ancient body that is actually starting to emerge? Are we beginning the next evolutionary process here for the unity species to return to Earth? Obviously this is going to go over generations, but maybe like it has to spark with something, and this could be it. This could be
clearly
consciousness. Yeah,
exactly. Clearly it starts in consciousness.
hmm.
So whatever the potential could be of diverging paths or evolving forms of the physical expression of humanity, and I could really imagine a world in which there are multiple versions of humans on the planet. And again, that might be a parallel expression, or it could be multiple in one existence, in one reality. Why not? Who's to say? Why would we limit what's possible? But what's starting is a seep through. There's a lot of seepage happening right now as people are awakening more and more, and those who are awake are opening even wider, as you are, Natalie, to bring through all kinds of different knowings or seeings or understandings that it may not even be clear exactly where it's coming from. I was thinking, well, if and when you encounter more people, if people, for instance, watch this video and some of you say, oh my God, that's me, and get in touch with you, and there starts to be a group of people who start to have memories, start to have awakenings, start to have visions or intuitions, more will be revealed. There will be a fuller picture starting to be revealed, because different people might see different aspects of this.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I really wanted to talk about this, that since becoming aware of the unity gender in myself and speak and attracting people, some of which are already in my life, but actually having conversations around this with them, I've come to feel the grief of what was lost. I feel in my body remembers living this way, living in unity with one another, which is probably why I felt that distress from a young age. My body remembers living in unity, as many of our bodies do anyway. But there was something about the unity species when we got split. we lost each other, and that part of us, that unity part of us, got trapped in the body. And now I feel that this is a big part of my work, is awakening, bringing, like, untrapping, unlocking those parts in people so that they can rise into their full body, their full potential in their body in this life, whatever that looks like. So basically letting the unity people, unity beings, out of their dungeons and finding one another again, coming together with one another again, because we remember each other. We have a common language, and that's what the creator types, my work of profiling bodies, is about. Very much about having a common language that we all understand, that doesn't come from the mind, that we can see bodies as pieces and parts of nature and start to make our way back together again. So it's unifying the unity species is what is emerging around my work. And yeah, the fragmentation of not just our species, but within our own bodies. Like, our own bodies have become fragmented. So parts have split off and gone into lockdown. And now we're in a process of reclaiming those parts and going, okay, is this really who I am? Do I have an ancient body trapped inside myself that really wants to emerge now?
So these are latent potential that are within the body.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were speaking, it made me think of just I think there's a very vivid longing, and you could definitely call that many of us feel, and that I think people in general actually feel unconsciously. I think it's what drives a lot of compulsive behavior, addictive behavior, all kinds of things. That longing for the non-separated state of existence, whatever form that took, whether it's a memory or whether it's just a recognition of the way things should be. But then how do we know that? What part of us knows that? That there is some other way that it's supposed to be. And I certainly remember from early childhood knowing that the way things are here is not the way it's supposed to be. And I know how it is. And it's only in recent years that I've come to think of that as a actual memory from another time, or just a knowing. So I think the more conscious people are, the more we can identify and name that longing. And it's really interesting that you are seeing to an even deeper level of like a physicalizing of that non-separative state. Because most of us think of the non-separation as a state of consciousness, of love and of wholeness, of harmony, of benevolence. It's more of like an emotional and a feeling of universal friendship, you could say, with nature and with each other. And I think everyone knows in their heart that's what they want. But yet there's even higher degrees of unity. And certainly the spiritual traditions are all kind of opening the door or inviting people to seek that. But it's not necessarily a physical experience. It's usually an experience of leaving the body, of divorcing oneself from the body, because the only place that unity exists is considered to be in the non-physical.
Yes, very good point. And I think that's really key as we're going through this ascension or whatever to 3D to 5D living on Earth, is that it's not a concept anymore. It has to be real lived physical experience. And until we do anchor it in the body, it's not real. It is just an energetic concept or a consciousness, but it hasn't landed in the physical realm. And what if we knew how to live that way? What if our bodies remembered how to do this because they've done it before?
You know, I'm thinking of the state of innocence, like the earliest expression of humans in a state of oneness with nature. And the fact that one can still find that state of innocence in certain small pockets of humanity that still exist on the planet. And that there is this joy and this oneness, this non-separation from the natural world, and integrated kind of organic life. So there is a way in which that oneness has been and can be experienced, but it's been left behind through educated, encultured human, quote, progress. And, you know, my belief has always been, well, you can't go backwards to find something in the past. We have to go forwards. We have to go to another higher turn of the spiral where we integrate somehow the developments and accomplishments of the mind and the developmental assets that have been accrued to humanity, but also bring it past that state of separation and conflict and rejection, of where we have actually split ourselves, as you say. We've split from nature, we've split from ourselves.
Yeah. So it's a remembering. So we don't have to come up with how we're going to do this. It's already in us. Yeah, it just needs to be woken up. And I will say, if you're resonating with this as being unity gender yourself, then the best way to really make progress and work with this energy, because it is an energy that needs to be unlocked from your body, is to be with other people of the same species, be with your people. So that's the magic that I've seen with in bringing, small groups together who resonate with this, is that they automatically start to open up. They start to flower and blossom in their their own unity embodiment. And certainly body work or touch is very transformative, because you're basically being awakened by someone in the same frequency, and your body recognizes that and it goes, oh, I remember you. That's how we all come together again, and we reform and unfragment ourselves. So yeah, it's a bit of a wild ride and just the beginning.
Yeah, it's a different dimension of body work and of remembering and of tribal reconnection. The way I like to see this is it's a very open field of possibility, because as we move into the future, into the potential of transforming our own consciousness into whatever this chrysalis is going to give rise to that hasn't taken form yet, we don't know what's possible. We certainly can't limit it through any kind of pre-decided ideas or beliefs about what's possible and what isn't. So it's beautiful to simply open the space to different visions that simply lift us to whatever magic is within each of us. We each carry a different seed, a different magical memory, different inner truth. So
and whatever opens up your self-expression, I think is what it boils down to, is what is going to unlock those dormant parts in you that are trapped away, and release them now into the present from your body.
And I predict, Natalie, just this conversation, just this talk, just releasing into the noosphere these ideas and visions and images may release things in people, certain people, just that in itself, without anything further. And that's part of why we're doing this. It's just to open the door to greater range of possibility, and particularly to send these kind of rays of empowerment to people who may have dormant potentials within yourselves that you don't even know exist yet.
Yeah, that's our hope. I hope it has awakened something in you. If you're watching to this point, maybe you have had your own realizations, your own epiphanies. And if you have, please leave a comment, because we'd love to open up this conversation more. And thank you, Toma, for excavating more from me around this.
It's been really delightful. Yeah. And if anyone thinks, oh, I know someone who would love to hear this talk, and please do send the link onward to that person.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for watching. Much love from us.